a topic that I really wanted to make sure we got to, and that connects to sentience and some of these other things, is human consumption of meat. And how do you think about this quite broadly? What's your experience been? I know you've had some interesting experiences with halibut. So I'd love to just hear all about that.
I'm not sure what you mean with halibut, but anyway.
Oh, with halibut, I think that you said that you were having some strength issues. And this was in the book, you were having some strength issues, and then you noticed that.
In particular, I do eat fish. And let
Yeah.
me tell you what my position is. Okay, the first thing is that creatures that are not sentient are not protected under my approach. And sentient means having their own point of view on the world, being able to experience, to have subjective perception, and so on. But a sine qua non, it's not the whole of sentience, but a sine qua non is the ability to feel pain. And it's usually looms large because that's something people can experiment on. And so there are experiments showing that fish feel pain. Okay, so that is clear. There are other creatures like crustaceans where it looks like they don't, but not so clear. The creatures that Aristotle called as stationary animals, like corals and sponges, pretty well not. Insects, pretty well not. It's funny because Aristotle used to think bees were sentient, but anyway. There are others. There are areas of doubt. Like, interestingly, the fish that clearly do feel pain are the so-called bony fish, teleost fish. But cartilaginous fish, that is sharks, they do these weird things that suggest that they don't feel pain. Namely, if a limb is damaged, they will actually eat their own limb. So that at least suggests maybe they don't feel pain. So we have to keep learning all the time. But anyway, that's the theory, and how you apply it will require further knowledge. But then there's a separate question with the creatures that do feel pain. What is the harm of death, and when does it kick in? Now, of course, some philosophers all along, since ancient Greece and Rome, have debated this question. What is the harm of death? And Epicurus thought that, death was never a harm, because if your life is cut short painlessly, well, then one minute you're there, the next minute you're not there, and you have this illusion that you're going to stick around and watch yourself being deprived of the good things of life. But of course, that's an illusion, but you're just not there. And the way he put it is, when death is there, we are not. And when we are there, death is not. So anyway, that was Epicurus. But what I've said all over the years about Epicurus's view is what he neglected is the way that death can cut short and therefore render fruitless certain activities that complicated creatures engage in. So, for example, if you're planning to be a lawyer, and you're studying for the LSAT, and then you're cut short in the middle of that preparatory activity, and you never get to the full activity, then all your preparation is fruitless. And similarly, if a lot of people spend a lot of their time getting ready to have children, and then they are frustrated and they die before they actually have children, all that preparatory activity seems to be wasted and futile. So I developed what I call the interruption argument, that the bad of death is when it interrupts a meaningful activity that you're in the course of doing, but you don't get to unfold and do completely. And that could even just be doing another time the thing that you love. I think a lot of us just have our routines, and what would be meaningful is to do the thing you like yet one more time. And so that too would be protected. But if you're a creature that doesn't have a richly developed sense of time, so that one thing leads on to another, then you live just in the moment, then you can't be interrupted. And some philosophers, like Jeff McMahon, thought that almost all animals were uninterruptible. They lived in the moment. And so he thought, killing painlessly an animal like that was okay. I don't think that. I think it's clear that that's wrong. But I do think, up till now, that is true of fish. And here I invoke on my side Singer and R.M. Hare. R.M. Hare, the great utilitarian philosopher, wrote a very interesting article called Why I'm Only a Demi-Vegetarian, saying that he ate fish if he knew that it had a good, flourishing life before, a free-range life, and his local fishmonger conked it in the head painlessly, and he could actually see the guy doing it. So, obviously net fishing and line fishing are excruciatingly painful, but this was a really painless death. And he said, then I would eat that fish. And this was in a volume about Peter Singer. And so Singer, replying to all the essays in the volume, said, yeah, he agreed with that argument, that if a creature really does live in a moment and ended in the instant, that it's okay to eat that creature. He said, the only reason I don't do that is that I'm a public figure and everything I do is watched and it's too complicated to explain all the argument. But anyway, so that's my position, is the position of Hare and Singer if he weren't a public figure. I guess I might be sort of a public figure. And I feel like, okay, I put it in the book. I put the whole chapter on the interruption argument. Anyone who wants to take me up on that should read that chapter. It's very funny, though, because people don't always read a book as a whole. And so there are people who say, well, she's eating fish. What does she need? And I said, well, look at my argument. See what you think. You don't like the argument? Tell me what your objection is. And maybe we differ about the argument, or maybe you don't think it applies to fish, but then show me the research and so on. So, I'm able to be argued with on this. The one thing I will say, back to your point about strength, is that at my age, which is 76, my protein needs every day are 65 to 70 grams of protein. So I do a lot of physical exercise. To get that from beans and lentils is very difficult unless you have an iron stomach and digestion, and I don't. I can't digest that larger quantity of beans and lentils, although I do eat some. And dairy, which of course is what a lot of people rely on, I eat a lot of yogurt too, but dairy is even worse from a humane point of view, because if you really believe my argument, there's no wrong done in the painless killing of a fish that's had a good life. Then you can find out pretty much what kind of life the fish has had if you go to Whole Foods and question them rigorously. But then there's dairy, where the dairy industry relies, and it's hard to know how it would not rely, on depriving a calf of its mother and depriving the mother of the calf. We can imagine, and I think Sue Donaldson and Will Kimlicka do a good job here, of imagining a reformed egg industry. And of course, I eat eggs too, for free-range eggs. But we don't have to imagine it because it's real. Free-range eggs can make a profit because you just let the free-range hen lay, and then they need a few that they want to keep and sit on, but they don't need all the eggs that they lay. But the dairy industry, it's hard to imagine it being reformed and still making a profit. And Donaldson and Kimlicka say, well, you might have this boutique industry, but it probably would be so expensive. So that's the problem. What are the alternatives? And so I do feel, anyway, I do have an argument, which I think is a good argument, saying I'm not doing any wrong. But then I'm further backed up in my own choice by thinking, well, if I were to decide, well, it's too much annoyance to argue with the people on the other side, I would still have a problem with exactly how to live and what to eat. And dairy is not a very good choice. So that's what I think. But let me talk about meat eating now. Meat eating is, that meaning by that, the meat of animals, I'm putting fish to one side now. That's bad for three reasons. Number one, diet. It's really pretty unhealthy choice. It's just not good for your heart and your organs and so forth. But second, for climate change, because it supports an industry that's one of the largest contributors to global warming. Methane gas is one of the worst things for global warming. So you might want to stop eating meat just for that reason, even if you didn't care about the animals. And then the third, of course, obvious reason is the way it leads to this industry, which is grossly tortures thousands and thousands of animals. So what can we do? Well, I always favor technological solutions, and I think we have some. Namely, I mean, the impossible meat, I think is more one side issue. If people like that, it's a form of plant-based food that is more or less healthy depending on how people make it. But I don't like food that's supposed to taste like meat because I don't like the taste of meat. So that doesn't help me. But I think the more promising thing is actually lab-grown stem cell meat. Now, it still has the health problems, and that's up to you if you want to incur those problems. But as it becomes increasingly available, that will be meat that doesn't involve the climate damage and it doesn't involve the torturing of animals. So I think that's a pretty good substitute.